Alright. This is how it always feels when I know the culprit but got no proof. There has to be something he couldn't have disposed of. Any ideas? Maybe it's best to deal with the issues they brought up first. Like, I'm pretty sure you've nailed it with this theory, but those details might reveal a weakness. Pretty rare for you to insist on the details. Well, at some point, it's worth looking a little deeper for proof. We almost got him now. This is the time to get as hung up as necessary. I guess it's worth a shot, then. Alright, let's think about the points that were just brought up. I'll address the issues you mentioned. Alright. It's true that there appears to be no reason for the culprit to drill 2 holes. One of them lines up perfectly with the victim's wound. That should have been enough. What then was the reason for the second hole, you ask? Well, it must have been... mistake or contingency? There's realistically no reason for a contingency. Mistake. There seems to be no purpose to the second hole because there wasn't. However, this was obviously drilled by the same person as the other one, which would mean it's something that happened unintentionally. Maybe the culprit made a mistake. I'm not sure how plausible that is if he really planned it out to this degree. There are various ways it could have happened. Clearly he had some way to listen in. But keep in mind that he wouldn't have been able to see the exact position of Mrs. Holden's body. Combine that with the rotation of the lower floor, and it's possible he miscalculated. Also possible he didn't know about the rotating floor at all, and had to readjust. Well, I suppose I can see how that could have confused him. Still, this would mean the holes were drilled after the crime. How is that possible? There was always someone in this study until the trial began. I guess during the trial isn't an option. No, 0 points. Even if it was a rush job, the autopsy was ready by then. Unless the good detective straight up guessed without looking at the wound. You know, the police might do that. I'll give you that's unlikely. You couldn't have known where Mrs. Holden would collapse beforehand. But the drilling has to have happened between my fight with her and Dr. Hellinger's autopsy. There's really only one explanation for this. The sound of your drill was masked by something else somehow. No? It slipped my mind we apparently had a construction site next door. Because that's about what it would take to cover up this level of noise. Maybe not, but there was something else that covered up the drilling noise. Oh, Hunt? It has been mentioned how the detective performs her investigations. While these devices allow for impressively fast results, we know they come with a few downsides. One of them being that starting some of them up is apparently pretty loud. Is that true, detective? That's, I am forced to say, subjective. The loudest would be the vacuum pump. It does raise the sound level for some time. I cannot rule out that using a drill at the same time might go unnoticed. Well, there you have it. But how would the witness have been able to predict that? Well, I'm not going to claim that Dr. Hellinger is an accomplice or anything. I already asserted that the presence of you and the detective was no coincidence, Your Honor. It was rather irregular. I won't deny having my own suspicions about it. If he knew you would be present and what your investigation methods were like. And it was fairly predictable this noise would happen at some point. Haven't you geniuses forgotten about something? I know, it's just a tiny detail, but you did say I fired a gunshot through that hole. It's a whole order of magnitude louder than a drill. Not even those machines could have covered that. Unless you've gone deaf, and honestly wouldn't surprise me, that'd be a bit of an achievement to miss. Well, that's not really an objectively valid complaint. This chase most certainly already accounted for that. The floor is soundproof and would have absorbed most of the noise. Or the bullet in Mrs. Holden's body would have acted as a lid that would have suppressed the sound. Exactly. We're way ahead of your excuses. Close one. Good thing we earned enough. Good thing we earned enough detective points with Alright. She's not actually in the court record anymore. Hang on. She's not actually in the court record anymore. Where did she go? Saris, where did you go? It's a good thing we earned enough points with Saris to, Don't shout Eureka yet. There is one problem in your hypothesis you didn't yet account for. We earned enough credibility with her for her to have this thought and just presume that we had the same thought. Alright, let's hear it then. It's not merely hearing, sight is a factor as well. We always kept a minimum of 2 people surveying the study during the investigation. It's objectively unlikely we would have missed a hole opening up in the floor. The first hole was a mistake. It would have taken Mr. Drell a moment to realize. He couldn't have covered it up fast enough for nobody in the study to notice the difference. Certainly. It's close enough to the body that it's doubtful it would be missed. Maybe it wasn't seen for the same reason the other wasn't. One hole was covered by the body. The other one happened to be covered by something as well when it got drilled. You know what a convenient excuse is? I can give you a couple of examples, all from today. I don't really care for much for it either way. I don't have to try so hard to prove my screw-up. We're, over that. Don't get me wrong. If you all agreed I'm too dumb to pull this off, I could honestly live with that. You still didn't prove I drilled anything. Stop waving that around so menacingly, please! I'll admit that the witness is right. Even if you explain when and how he could have done it, that doesn't prove that he did. Alright, what now? That has to have been helpful somehow. The first hole Mr. Drell made was offset by mistake, but nobody saw it for some reason. That really was because it was covered by something at the time. Maybe it should be used as proof. I have an assertion. Oh boy. Hold on to your hats, folks. Thanks for the enthusiasm. I predict it won't last much longer. That misplaced hole will be your final mistake. Nobody saw it happening at the time, probably because it was being covered by something. There's still proof that it happened at the moment because he drilled into something at the scene. There's no evidence something fell into one of the holes, so he drilled into something at the scene. I think that's a pretty safe bet at this point. Something was on top of where you drilled, then it's likely you drilled a hole into that very thing, which is going to be insane. The reason why this particular factoid happened is the undeniable proof that the holes were drilled right there, right then. Debatable, but whatever. Remind me of this object we found at the scene again. Never got to check it out myself, but sure don't remember anything with a hole in it being mentioned. Not counting your theory, of course. Oh my god, Dao did not have the ability to feel his legs, and his left foot was injured, and he bled out. There's definitely something. There had to have been. Please back up this claim of yours, then. What did Mr. Drell accidentally drill into? He drilled into Jones Dow. There was, in fact, something like that in the study. Or rather, someone. He drilled into a person? Never covered the hole at the scene wasn't found there because it moved out. That may be so. This still doesn't sound like it made sense to me. I mean, you explained how nobody heard or saw it. Would this person have felt it? Wait. Hold up. If the blood spots in this evidence are from the 2 holes, and like the drop of blood on the floor, the small drop of blood came from Melanie, and the big drop of blood came from drilling into fucking Jones Dow and having him bleed through the hole. Oh goddamn. That would be accurate. That would be accurate for most people here, with one exception. Witness that lacked feeling in his legs, Mr. Dow. I thought Mr. Dow merely stepped on a wooden fragment. That was Victoria's claim, but there's nothing confirming that aside from some blood. Mr. Dow bled all over the hallway, so that really doesn't prove much. What really were the chances stepping on a small wooden fragment would pierce his shoe? I disagree. It's absolutely plausible. Now what? Nobody gives a damn about odds. The simple fact is, anything could have caused that wound. Was there any blood in the drill you say I used? Oh wait, you can't even check it. Well, if there was, it might have been because he's a patient. Could have lived without contemplating whether you use that on patients. Would make it pretty unsurprising that Mr. Dow's teeth were gone. Disturbing imagery aside, what is your response? Certainly we know a wound exists. Can you prove it was caused by this drill in the floor? Would have brought it up if I couldn't. Okay, maybe. Yes, the drill is out of reach. That can't be the only way to prove it, though. Here's the proof. And Mr. Dow's was caused by drilling a hole from the lower floor. Do we present this? I can spare. Oh, it is? We saw the proof right there in the secret room below the study. Recall what we found there. 2 drops of blood on the floor. Some blood would have poured into the drill, into the hole, if it actually wounded someone. A drop of it fell onto the floor of the room below. Thought those were from the attack on Mr. Kova. Like Dr. Hellinger correctly noted in the case, that was only our assumption. Yeah, because you have no way of checking the blood. Too bad that means it goes both ways. Could be as you say, but it could easily be someone else's blood. Amazing detective proof. I'm in awe. There's no need to examine the blood to rule that out. This really is an uncanny bloodstain, isn't it? How would it look like there are drops running down a wall, even though it's on flat ground? The explanation for this phenomenon has to be, once again, the revolving floor. One is flown toward the window. I'm going to spell it out more directly. Centrifugal force. Whoa. Hmm? Let me think about this for a second. You're absolutely generating some of that with all of your circular arguments. What are you even on about? It's basic physics. What happens if you place a drop of liquid on a rotating platform? Liquid is going to be pushed outwards toward the edge. That's the explanation for the shape of the stain. Okay, so what we're going with here is that, flown toward the window. Yep. I guess it works. I guess I'm griping with the wording, because I feel like it would have arced more than flown straight, like along a radial axis. That makes sense? Like, it would have expanded. It would have gone outwards, certainly, due to that, but, I feel like would have gone outwards and, like, arced to show the direction that the tower is rotating in. I feel like that's again, I'm not going to claim to be an expert here, but that just feels like what would potentially be a more accurate representation of that. But I guess I'll let it play out and see what happens, but Was that really enough of a rotation to cause something like this? It's also... It's going to be an effect whenever the speed is in 0. My intelligence has to be too high to mentally conceive your asinine delusion. Blood would have dried long before such an inconsequential force had any chance to move. What? Yeah. Thanks for making my point for me. True, the floor seemed to be revolving in hardly perceptible intervals in speed. We need some time to move a liquid to any significant degree. And blood usually dries within a few minutes. Usually. Oh, Jones Dow's on anticoagulants. Does it say that in his... Oh yeah, he's hemophilia. Hemophilia meaning his blood does not coagulate and dry. I can tell you have something in mind, Miss Chase. Is that how hemophilia works? She intends to casually ignore the laws of physics again. That's all. Okay, I get where that is going. One of the stains dried up before it was displaced to any significant degree by the centrifugal force. Oh, that's not what I want to look. However, this was not the case for the other stain. Well, I suppose... I guess the point here is that it's like a... the barely perceptible force would slowly draw the stain outwards. Okay, I can accept that. Because then you'd have like a barely perceptible rotation here. It's the one thing, as if this one is made up of blood that takes much longer to dry. Does that how hemophilia? I don't know if that's how that works. I'm willing to accept the centrifugal force explanation, but I don't know if that's how that works. This would be true for one kind of blood, the kind of person with the hemophilia would have. What in blazes? Hemophilia impacts the ability for blood to clot, so it can stay liquid for much longer. As far as we know, Mr. Dow is the only person present with that condition, and it's fairly rare. There's near certain evidence that the blood could only have been his. Well, wait. We're just still going to try and explain this way. You said that Mr. Dow never visited the lower floor and has only been to the study once. The only way for his blood to end up there, and up there, as if the holes were drilled during the investigation. You were the only person on the floor, on that floor the entire time. Hey, did he actually do all of that? Just what you'd expect from someone who's worked for that man. I thought the defendant was the evil one, but this is something else. Maybe it is. Maybe it does. Now been established that the witness must have indeed drilled the holes. It seems hard to believe, but he is likely the real guilty party behind everything that's happened. Oh, the goddamn phone. Stop with the uncritical group thing. Wake up, sheeple. You have nothing up to stand on, witness. Listen, I drilled a bunch of holes. You got me, okay? Does that prove I killed her? The heck it does. That's more than enough to consider you guilty. Why else would you drill them? No other reason to do that. Are we just gonna buy that you did it just for fun? You know full well why, but I guess I have to spell it out. I drilled them because I'm a gigantic moron. I won't dispute it, but that doesn't excuse you. What are you getting at, witness? Frankly, I'm tired of hearing your excuses. I'm not the bad guy here, I'm the victim. It was all a setup by Lillian from the start. Everything I did is her fault. Maybe do it. You told me to drill these. Seriously? Why the hell would I do that? You're not fooling anyone. You were in serious trouble after shooting Mrs. Holden in a locked room. The locked room was the biggest thing working against you, so you had to create a weakness. That sure wasn't an easy weakness to point to. Yeah, well, neither you nor me could have known the building would move and undo the holes. I really was an idiot. I should have given it more thought before agreeing to it. You were planning to set me up and take the fall from the start, huh? Look at all the things I did because of you, and this is the amazing reward I get. Nobody's really still buying this at this point, am I right? It certainly does sound like it's merely the next lie. You have no choice but to believe it. Lillian's whole case against me rests on a fundamental contradiction. Let's address the elephant in the room, shall we? Don't think I'll let you get away. You're not as guilt-free in this as you're trying to make yourself look. A locked room. Your accusation is based on me making you swallow the key to the crime scene. That's impossible. The door of the study was unlocked when you got there. It was locked when the witness arrived and had to break it down. It doesn't just magically lock itself. Something doesn't add up. The key wasn't inside your body yet. You swallowed it after the crime because you're guilty. Oh shit. You're right. It would not have been possible to lock the door if that was your doing. I don't know what to believe anymore. Contrary to popular belief, the straightforward explanation is most often right. You really thought she'd be innocent in this. She worked for Dr. Lead as well. This isn't rocket science. Only one thing left to do, Your Honor. Take both of us to jail and have that be the end of it. Can't even be surprised this is coming down to the locked room. This accomplished nonsense is getting unreal, though. How stubborn can he be about going for mutual destruction? Yeah. Hang in there. This has to be the last thing he's got left. You're right. Let's do this and finally get out of this mess. Got to stay focused. This is a remnant of the suffering created by Thad and Lead. It's my responsibility to put an end to this. Oh, shush. There are plenty of other reasons to suspect you by now. I'm not the one on trial. Yet. What matters in the end is your involvement in Mrs. Holden's murder. They're a bunch of plain impossibilities unless you're the one that swallowed the key. You lied about that? Honestly, that makes it plain obvious that you're guilty. You admitted to drilling the holes. It's just possible that you're her killer. Did you forget? This is a civil trial. Reasonable doubt won't cut it. Is you shooting Mrs. Holden more likely than not? That's the question. A lot of possibilities were raised that cast doubt on it, like the potential involvement of poison. If the defendant intentionally hid the key, that destroys the case for her innocence. Fine, I guess I'll have to hear the objections. Tell me what's so impossible about my accusation. Sure, drumroll please. What are you basing this claim on? A little trick of mine called critical thinking. Both you and Mrs. Holden were able to get into the study. You could not walk through a locked door. Therefore, it was unlocked at the time. Is that something we can dispute? No. Not worth arguing about basic facts like that. Let's wait and see for now. Can we really be sure the door was locked at the time? There could have been something else preventing the door from being open. Damn, you're right. There's absolutely no evidence it was locked. Protocol. Whoa. Accept. How do you do? Oh. Take that. There we go. Wanted to point out that the evidence trailed directly states exactly that. Doesn't really matter if the witnesses could tell. The door was found in a locked state. The only time that could have had done is after Mrs. Holden entered the study. It seems a little contradictory, don't you think? It's really out of the question that the door could have been locked. Could have been locked any other way. Give the lengths you went to for everything else. Who's to say you didn't manage to get a duplicate key? Amazing logic there. I guess anything is just possible now, proof or not. Really though, did you even read the description on this key? Anyone? Even the tech expert said it's impossible to duplicate. And if you ignore that and say I could have used some lockpicking trick, how and when exactly? I would have needed to lock the study after Mrs. Holden entered, while it was being watched. Now I'll give myself props for managing to be pretty stealthy, but that's clearly beyond me. Might... You still could have done it without being seen. Maybe you didn't have to enter the hallway to do it. I just used a key tied to a string. Checks out. Maybe not that simple. You're right. We need to make a complex pulley mechanism. And throw an ice somewhere just to make it cool. Got enough yet? Does that make it any more practical? There's bound to be a way to tamper with a lock with the right method. Oh. No signs of tampering. Alright, prefer to look too much there. Damn it, now's the time to get careless. Door just doesn't lock itself. So it doesn't make any sense for you to do that. It makes perfect sense. People do desperate things when cornered. Compared to whatever I must have been thinking to plant the key like that, this is a lot more sensible. Truth remains the truth, whether you want it to be true or not. Don't start talking like him. That's the point. You did something that ridiculous, so it'd be less likely to suspect than the simple explanation. I think the imposter stunt established you're crazy enough. This isn't beyond you. Excuse me? I'm not crazy. That's pretty uncouth of you. The voices in my head assure me I'm perfectly sane. Like I said, this is a civil trial. What's more likely than not? You hiding the key because you're a killer? Or the door getting locked by some unknown magic trick? Panic murder is the safer bet here. You can trust me. I'm a little bit of an expert on that myself. If it has to be one of the two things, which is what it looks like, then logic and the evidence still point to you in this case, defendant. Doubt there's any ground I can gain with arguing plausibility alone. Figuring out and proving what happened might be the only way to get out of this. Freaking locked rooms, I never get them right. It shouldn't be too difficult at this point. We know we didn't have any access to the key. That's the whole point of the dentist appointment. It seriously narrows down the kind of tricks he could have pulled to accomplish this. True. Basically means he couldn't have locked the door, right? At least not with the key. It's got to have been some kind of illusion that played it that threw us for a loop. The study was unlocked. Then it was locked. Only the key can lock or unlock it. The way I see it, one of these three assumptions has to be wrong. Press one of those then. Keep questioning him until you see a way he could have done it. Doesn't seem to be any limits to how far this murderer was willing to go. I'll break free of his frame-up and end this. The Reaper won't have the last laugh. Unlocked. Okay, so we can't actually present that. There's a cheeky thing going on here. The lock when the witnesses arrived had to break it down. Can I just straight up do this? False. False. Let's further. Oh, what if I actually can walk through a locked door? Oh, sorry, must be a skill issue on my part. Some things cannot be brute forced. It's time you learned that instead of fighting basic logic. No, there are still situations where you can still enter a room even if the door is technically locked. Could have been locked while open, and the frame would not have held it in place. We could have just straight up had a broken door frame. That's how the witnesses entered, after all. Sure. You want to have this so badly, you can have it. Just a couple of questions. Was the door broken when you passed through it? Honestly, that's not something I paid attention to. Lights were dim and I was focused on getting in quickly. Could have very much already have been broken. Alright. Not like your word on that would have been worth much anyways. If you had any proof to back that up, by all means. Of course, you both know that this is pointless. It couldn't have been pre-broken. It was still working properly when the witnesses got there, after all. Doors locked but openable like I suggested, then this isn't a contradiction. It must be a matter of how it went from being locked in properly to seeming actually locked. You've gone over this with the umbrophobic lawyer before. You're best equipped for that. Tell us. We're right there on the other side. Did somebody block the door from the inside with a chair or something? Umbrophobia, fear of rain. Solid move. Absolutely doable for anyone physically present inside the room. Well, I didn't see anything like that, but the door looked completely unobstructed from the inside. That's hard to argue with. I'm gonna be sure what I want to argue here, or I might regret it. Let's check our options here. Realistically used to keep the door in place. Obstructing the door's path, force push pull. It'd have to be something invisible. And that'd be the only. Invisible to the naked eye in darkness, and this is the only thing. This is where we start getting to this, this photopolymer shit. Which hasn't factored into the case whatsoever. But this is really the end. Is it that? Shut with tape or strong glue. Breaking open such a door would be similar to a locked one, as there would only be initial resistance. We could actually use some of that right now. For your mouth, that is. It'd be safe from any dentist and we wouldn't have to endure this nonsense anymore. Win-win. My point stands. What point? Hello? Where is this tape or glue if it was actually used? It should have been found at the scene then. That's not even the biggest issue. How would I have applied it to the door after you and Mrs. Holden entered, but before the witness? With glue, it could have been something. It could have been slow to dry. Slow enough that it didn't hold the door closed yet when. That's not reliable. Same issue as the slow-acting poison from before. No way to apply that preemptively, and I sure it would take effect only after you entered. May sound like it can't be done, but if you use this to seal the door shut, all these problems can be avoided. They would present the holes. Might be usable, I can't really argue that unless I can explain what happened to it. It was on the lower floor. When I've removed anything in the scene after the fact. Happened to it. Still in this room. Still in the room, but if it wasn't found. Does it manage to blend in somehow? Where in the world would it be now? Okay. On the door? Like, is it on the door fragments? I mean, we'll try it. corner behind the... Let's keep the... Oh, come on. Make sure to hold on to that. Oh, come on. Too much a stretch, it seems. What? We get kicked out for that? Oh. Hang on a second. Jesus Christ, you want to know how specific spot I had to point out there? Like the tiniest of cracks between the door and the wall, near the corner. That was annoying. No matter how much you want to point this option as ridiculous, I could see through it. You very much had access to something to lock the door with. Same material you used to fix the holes. Nah. Ow. That's supposed to be an explanation. What's being used for that, again? They're called photopolymers, Your Honor. A substance that hardens in response to light. It's not unlike regular glue. However, that makes it possible to time when you actually want to harden them. You could apply this substance to the hinges of the door. In its liquid form, it would stick to them even when the door is open. And all you had to do was harden them at the right moment. The next base this claim, nothing remotely of the sort was found in the room. Did Dr. Hellinger get the time to analyze every single speck of dust? Hardly. The fact of the matter is, some debris was found at the corner behind the door. It appeared to simply be bits of the wall that came off where the door collided with it, but the door can be pre-broken, then the wall can be pre-damaged as well. That's a bit. When the hardened polymers broke off, they blended in with the debris from the wall. Good one. You're still keeping this up. Ooh, that's what I should be saying. I need a drink. This stuff hardens pretty fast when it's left out in the light. Oh dear. Doesn't make it any different from fast-acting glue then. Well done. What do you mean? These weren't exposed to light before me and Mrs. Holden entered the room. There's no issue. And how would I have prevented that? Tell me, Liar, were the lights in the study on? Don't bother answering that. We both know they were on the whole time. See the light yet? There's no planning this in advance. It would have hardened up on the spot. Okay, but that's... Well, I suppose that's true. Done with letting her cook up this stuff yet? This is unworkable as the rest of it. Did sound promising for a moment, so I'll spare you the penalty, Miss Chase. Resume the cross-examination, Mr. Treya. Miserably, Your Honor. Seriously? Seemed to crumble for a moment, but no dice? Or doesn't just... Eh? Who's this? Oh, Hellinger. All of you are objectively incorrect. Excuse the interruption. Dr. Hellinger? What is it this time? I noticed that a piece of evidence is being grossly mischaracterized. To ensure that the conclusions here are accurate, there's a need to clarify something. This is decidedly not your decision to make. Do not possess the intellectual capacity to remember this. Given Aurelia quite enough unnecessary help. All it accomplishes is to prolong this farce. That is precisely the attitude which has led to many incorrect convictions. How disappointing. I hoped you were more intelligent than this. She is more intelligent than you, Victoria. It seems you are incapable of grasping your standing. I will allow myself to spell it out. You should be aware of the connections I have in this state. If I observe you providing any more unauthorized help to Aurelia, Kristen Estate will ensure that you regret your acts of insubordination. My advocacy will convince the lawmakers of this state to strip Aletheia of all its privileges. Wow! Unless they are wise enough to terminate your contract before it comes to that. Start acting like a proper piece and only make the moves you're told to. I see. Noted. It's clear that would be the more efficient move. However, I'm going to disregard that instruction, Victoria Priston. I beg your pardon? Even if my machines give accurate results, their utility depends on the humans who use them. There's no measurable merit in being your tool. It's counterproductive, and you're objectively unlikable. Pooh! You! Please calm down, Miss Preston. We should clearly listen to the detective's insights. Thank you, Your Honor. This regards the debate about photopolymers you were having. Also, Your Honor, can I have a talk with you about sanctioning this utterly monstrous piece of trash, Victoria Preston, for all the threats she just made to me in this very moment? Because goddamn. Huh. It sounds like the one who gave you this data didn't accurately convey my explanation. It wouldn't be the first time. What did we get wrong? Is that not how they work? It's true that these kinds of resins can be made to be hardened by light. The generally more common type is activated only by certain parts of the light spectrum. And more practical if they're not immediately turned solid by everything. I suppose that's a small difference, but does it invalidate the argument about the light in the study? There are types of this resin that only activate with high energy frequency like blue or UV light. Lights in the study are not only dim, there's practically no blue light present. And the curtains cover all the windows. Coincidentally, dentists widely use these types that activate with blue light for their fillings. Ooh! And the conditions of the study were perfect for photopolymers to not harden on their own. Thanks, Detective. I almost fell for it. Your approach may not appear efficient, but you haven't flunked completely so far. Thought my method was giving me an advantage, yet this witness turned it against me. It was humbling. This is the least I can do to make up for it. Can you demonstrate your innocence? I'd like to evaluate the results of your method. This should be more than enough to prove it. Ooh, alright. You're done, Einstein, because this changed nothing. So what if it didn't harden from the light? That leads to the same problem in reverse. The curtain makes it impossible for me to shine light into the study. Thus, I couldn't have used that to lock the door. Let me show you something quick, and then we'll figure out how to apply it. Displays merely a blue screen when switched on. Well, well. It's over, Mr. Drayle. I think you know it. Never be over for you and me. Suppose it is time to resume the cross-examination. Please resume your test mode and add your rebuttal, witness. Enjoy your last moments. I know what I have to do. Oh shit, alright. New music. We're just gonna go straight to it.
Objection!
Let's not pretend this is still a mystery. It's obvious how you intended to lock the door. A very strong source of blue light. Doesn't that ring any bells? The old TV provided exactly that. Ah! No! Oh my! Bigger picture. I have grasped it. All the mysteries have been solved. Let's go through it from the beginning, shall we? Mr. Drayle's plan for this crime must have been decided months ago. There's quite a bit of preparation that went into it. Oh, this is a jam. This tower, the former residence of the Reaper, was chosen as the location for several reasons. To frame me for murder, Mr. Drayle needed a victim. Melanie Holden suited that role. He convinced her that I was a problem she needed to get rid of to hide her own crimes. The two of them came up with a plan to lure me to the study, using this book as the bait. This is a jam. Miss Holden thought she could stab me in the back there and make it look like self-defense. But Mr. Drayle offered to unload the bullets from my magazine during the dental visit. She never seemed to hesitate despite me turning around and pulling my gun after all. That would make sense why she didn't hesitate with a fucking gun in her face. Of course, Mr. Drayle never did anything of the sort. He didn't want me to die such a simple death. That is a very weak objection. You don't have the privilege to speak like you've understood everything. Put it in your words. Seriously? Someone with your supposed intellect should realize there's nothing left you can do. It's always been like that once we reach this point. Even if it took a bit longer this time around. You and your asinine bigger picture. You said Mrs. Holden was going to shoot herself to make it look like self-defense. Right. That was likely the plan after using the actress on TV to make it sound like I threatened her. Ha! It makes no sense that Mr. Drell promised to remove the bullets. She would have had no bullets to shoot herself with. We didn't find any on her. Yeah, that's about as trivial a point as I figured you'd make. Was that is easily accounted for? Bullets were removed by someone, or she didn't need any bullets to shoot herself? Obviously, you don't actually. Wait a second. Might be a bit outlandish. If she faked a wound with something else, someone would still question why there's no bullet. The simpler approach. Who's to say she brought no bullets with her? The fact that none were found is fairly meaningless. You already know that your client removed this from her pocket. If she was trying to keep suspicion from her mother, she would have naturally taken the bullets as well. Such a perfectly simple explanation you could have figured out yourself. Agreed. Where were we? Aurelia. Mr. Drell took care of some other things in the tower in advance. Prepared a suitable target on the cleaning platform and lowered it to the display room. Broke the door to the study in advance. Imagine he told Mrs. Holden that this would make it look more like a proper break-in. However, he also stole the key, unbeknownst to her. Photopolymers were also applied by him to the hinges at some point. Oh, the hinges. This is what he did inside the tower. There was still more to do before the day of the auction. Or to have a bullet to frame me with, Mr. Drell returned and attacked the tower with a gun. He was trying to make himself look like a random madman. Of course, the point was to get a bullet to the top, like I explained previously. The stage was almost set. The final piece of the setup was my dentist appointment. There, he swapped the barrel of my gun and also managed to slip the key into my anesthetized mouth. I also removed one bullet from my magazine so it would look like I fired a shot. Everything was ready for the next day, the day of the crime. Mr. Drell likely arrived as early as possible to avoid too many onlookers. They didn't mention any, gunpowder on the gun, did they? Preferring to stay anonymous for this, he provided the guard with fake ID. He slipped into the display room and cut himself a path onto the suspended platform outside. Retrieving the bullet he fired there, it was time to wait. Everything went as he hoped for the moment. I sadly took the bait. Entered the tower, intending to search for the book during the auction. Objection! Oh, that sounds so feeble. Your ignorance is finally on full display. That had been an intentional point to save this for this point in the trial, wasn't it? Feeble objection, save for the Seriously? Your ignorance is finally on full display. Have you still not realized that the metal detector should have picked up on the key in my body? Oh, someone raised this point in the comments on an earlier video. I never addressed that until now because it just felt too obvious. Oh, okay, these choices are meaningless then. Make sure you're able to follow. Here's what happened. The detector detected the gun. The detector did in fact go off when I stepped through it. All of us merely assumed that the pistol was the only thing that was being detected. Of course, once I showed that to him, he didn't bother making me do the check again without it. Which, to not be too harsh on him, was entirely fair. What could I really have had on me that'd be worse than a weapon? That's a stupid coincidence. What if you hadn't brought your gun or taken it off before the check? Seemed to assume this would have been a problem. What would any of us have really thought then? Mr. Garp might have patted me down. There's nothing to be found on me, and it would have been forced to conclude it's simply a malfunction. Minor weird incident at best, and I'd have been able to proceed all the same. Anyway, back to the real mysteries, not your stupid complaints, Victoria. The auction began as planned. Of course, the item I was after wasn't there. For showing everyone the knife, Mrs. Holden intentionally paused the auction to give me an opening. And I walked straight into it. This is where Mrs. Holden's plan derailed, however. When she drew the knife, a deadly poison, courtesy of Dr. Lee, was released. And so she was the one to die instead. That wasn't all that transpired. It was time for Mr. Drayle to execute the rest of his plan. He'd been closely following the situation in this study, as his next actions depended on it.
Objection.
No. No! How was Mr. Drayle able to follow what was going on? Very predictable. Answer is naturally not that complicated. Simple. He pressed a listening device against the study wall. Faceless. How would he have gotten something that suspicious into the building? Guess I'll have to clarify for you. There's nothing notable about the doctor bringing in a stethoscope. Oh, it's standard equipment, even for dentists. Said he was being treated like a medical patient. Mr. Drayle paid close attention to what was going on inside. However, that approach still ended up making a proper diagnosis more difficult. It was now his plan that was going to be derailed by unknown factors. Original intent must have been to turn on the TV at some point after Mrs. Holden's death. Didn't see enough to perfectly time it with her collapse or anything, but that wasn't needed. Even if I had ran out of the room before that. Could have still presented a locked door to the guests without any issues. I really would have thought my story that Mrs. Holden simply collapsed. Like he was too damning evidence. He never got a chance to do it himself. Unbeknownst to him, there was someone directly witnessing the crime, Mariko Poli. And this person carried an alternate means to turn on the TV. The struggle startled her so much that she ended up doing just that. Whether that was good or bad luck for our culprit is debatable. Must have certainly confused him about whether I actually shot Mrs. Holden for a moment. I got cleared up once the witnesses broke the door and mentioned the number of bullets. Knowing that I didn't shoot, he knew he had to add the final detail himself. The noise of the detective's machines provided cover for drilling a hole through the ceiling. And this is where another wrench was thrown into his plan. Mr. Drayle made a blunder, possibly the result of his brief confusion. Determined where the body dropped, but failed to account for the fact that the floor had rotated. This led to him drilling in the wrong spot and wounding Mr. Dow. He was able to correct his mistake. He filled the hole and tried in the right spot at this time. In a view below the floor, a shot was fired right into Mrs. Holden's chest. Evidence had been planted. For covering up this hole as well, the operation was complete. All I need to do at this point was to clean up the remaining evidence and return upstairs. Once he was blending in with the other guests, there may have been no one practical way to ever catch him. No planet can account for the fickleness of fortune. Lighthouse didn't want to grant him such an easy exit. Mr. Poli, who had split off from the group to look for his daughter, did something unthinkable. Jumped onto the platform that had been left outside the tower floor. Lower floor. This put him in a position to hear the second shot and spot the culprit himself. Were it really the glasses that made him look like the Reaper? Or the expression of someone who had just finished doing the devil's work? Oh, that was a cold line. The building had already rotated enough that the hole in the window didn't line up with the platform. So Poli raised it back up and took away the only way of escape. There's nothing Mr. Drayle could do about it. He was trapped. Well, shit. That would do it. That would trap him. Never even considered that. The trial began without the absence being discovered. Mr. Poli's testimony eventually came to light. Mr. Drayle kept tabs on this as well as he could by listening through the floor. He naturally didn't intend to be found, it just decided to hide away in the justice room. Oh, he's getting more desperate. Your ignorance means to... Yeah, now you'll question why he would choose to hide there. After all, it wouldn't make much more sense for him to hide by staying in the secret room. The decision to go with another room is easily understood when you consider this factor, though. Brightness, noise level, temperature, having a gun. He could have taken the gun with him to any room. That doesn't really make a difference. You have to actually pick the right answer, isn't it? Why justice? Noise level? What noise? Brightness? I see no reason why there would be an approachable difference in brightness between the rooms. Temperature? It's cold outside today. Imagine the altitude doesn't help. Mr. Foley found that out when he tried to hide in the display room. That room was still insulated by a curtain. Would have been even worse without. With the open hole in the window, the temperature at non-maleficence would have dropped to freezing. Staying in such conditions for too long could have been very deadly for your health. Mr. Drell had no way of knowing how long Dr. Hellinger's investigation would take. He decided it wasn't worth the risk and took his chances with another room instead. Needless to say, he was in a dire situation regardless. He breathed a brief sigh of relief when the two people in justice appeared to leave. However, Mr. Guard had noticed him, after all, so the culprit had to resort to Plan B, getting rid of the witnesses. He first tried to ambush Mr. Guard with one of his pens, because it was less likely to alert the others, I imagine. That clearly didn't work. Guard stood his ground with his baton and managed to deflect the pen. Good guy, Guard. Oh, that's a nice picture. Unfortunately, Mr. Drell also had a gun, which he then promptly resorted to. He may have very well tried to kill everyone with it, if given the chance. Perhaps leave Lillian as the sole survivor to frame her. Mr. Guard didn't go down with a single shot because of his bulletproof vest. In fact, he forced Mr. Drell to spend the entire magazine on him. If it hadn't been for one unlucky hit, he would have survived. Mr. Drell, clearly untrained in using a firearm. Plan B was now ruined. He didn't want to be outnumbered without a weapon and escaped to the secret room. Mr. Kova chased after him but fell victim to an ambush. Mr. Drell then disguised himself, which could be called Plan C. Killing the others was no longer viable without a gun. And Drell would have instantly incapacitated him if he tried that. Thus, he was forced to play along, and we know the rest. Did I get everything right, Mr. Drell? Nah, there's still no proof, though. Laughable. You can check the hinges and behind the door for photopolymer leftovers. I'll no doubt try to claim something like I'm actually the one that planted them there. Except I had zero reason to do anything like that. If I still had the key, there would be no reason to lock the door in such an odd way. It wouldn't even make sense that I would conveniently bring a material like that. But... a good effort. I'm sure everyone here can see through your ruse, though. Right, guys? This was planned from the start. She intentionally got caught. Don't you see? Ought to frame me. Why is everybody looking at so serious? Stop staring at me. Enough of the prank. Smile. Let me see your teeth, please. I can fix them. Come on now. Say ah. Do a big scream. Say ah. Ooh. Right in the devil glasses. Because they were thin-lead glasses. Oh, the detective informed me that her findings have confirmed Miss Chase's theory about the door. It appears she has been right about everything. I actually did it? It's over? It hasn't sunk in yet, but... Oh, man. Case closed, Your Honor. All smug after beating someone down. That was your true nature. Oh, I can guess what you're thinking. Who am I to judge, eh? Let's lay out the reasons, then. What are you talking about? I've gone over your motive. You remember the JP Corporation. Don't play dumb with me. You know that makes no sense. So when did that group do something like this? They're not satisfied unless their crimes have zero suspects. Obviously not involved with them. Is this even a plot twist? What the? Then why would you do any of this? That's the billion-dollar question. Maybe you'd read that book again you care so much about. That might ring some bells. That's right. You'll find that I was one of his victims. Oh, God. There's the look. Didn't want to think about that option, did you? You suddenly want the truth so badly, I'll give you the truth. I still remember it. Well, the worst decision of my life. That would explain why... Has it out specifically for Aurelia. Hey there! Me? Yeah. Be interested in participating in a study? Sure, I love being scammed. Not after your money. It's actually a chance for you to earn some. Definitely doesn't sound like something a scammer would say. It's a normal thing here. At least, hear me out. You're a student like me, right? You really shouldn't be that picky. She seems enthusiastic enough. Can't hurt to listen. All right, what kind of study? Can't really tell you too much. That ruins the point of psychological studies. I'll have to do a few simple tasks and answer some questions. What are you studying, by the way? Psychology. Oh. Oh, what a coincidence. Study is actually related to psychology. Do you know Dr. Lead? He's running it. Wait, that Dr. Lead? Do I know him? He's only one of the most legendary figures in the field. That's what sold you on it. That's very unfortunate. Those were the days. I was a young student, eager to make a name for myself. Of course, I didn't pass up the chance to meet the famous Dan Lead. No points for guessing how well that went. Is that why your eyes turned out the way they did? He seemed to take a liking to me from the start. Called me promising. Didn't take too long to see his true colors. Manipulated, guilt-tripped, and tortured me, both mentally and physically. Or the Milgram experiment, stuff like that, but on steroids. I'd rather not recall at all. Ooh! Why was it necessary to cause so much suffering? I think in hindsight I can wager a guess. Purpose was probably to erase our emotions. Turn us into ruthless killers he could introduce into his organization. He tried to break our will so we would do his bidding. Resistance was futile. I was totally helpless to whatever nightmares he dreamt up for me. You don't really look like you're being held captive in this photo. Wasn't this a public event? Oh, he didn't lock his victims away all the time. I'd at least give the appearance everything was normal. As his favorite subject, I was forced to accompany him to many events like that one. Act like some kind of assistant for him. Why didn't you ask anyone for help then? You could have called the police. Oh sure, snitch on a member of a group of assassins who has government connections to boot. What then? Do just hide in a bunker and pray that'll be enough to stop them? What a genius plan. If you want to wind up decapitated in a locked room somewhere. Dr. Lead was no idiot. Let us run around freely because he knew we'd never dare to try anything. That does make sense. JP... God, that does make sense. JP doesn't leave witnesses. Or suspects. He specifically would... Yeah, like, at that point, that does become personal. If anything, that just ended up reinforcing our helplessness. I've thought up many plans to make it stop. In the end, none of them mattered. One day, the man behind it all simply stopped contacting me. The BU2 incident happened. Then Lead vanished in that mansion, never to return. Did he die? Escaped to some foreign country? The police weren't sharing much. I guess we'll just never know. Don't get me wrong. It's a massive relief. Not complaining there. On the other hand, it's also unnerving to not know for sure. Where was the closure? Where was the justice? Shouldn't somebody have been doing something about this? Nobody even knew what he'd done, how many people he'd hurt. He was treated as a tragic victim. Nobody had time for his victims. There were lots of people making wild claims as the news focused on the mystery. Everyone who was there being a suspect. Any legitimate info was simply drowned out anyway. Us victims were left to just come to terms with it on our own. What a joke. How are we supposed to move on? No getting rid of this pain. Those nightmares will always be with me. Call yourself the Reaper? And why haven't you killed me by now? That would have been better than leaving me with these memories. When the article came out a year later, I was naive enough to have some hope. People didn't miss the fact that I was in this photo. After the same wrong conclusions you presented earlier in this trial. They saw I accompanied the Reaper and immediately sentenced me guilty by association. Everyone in the field of psychology knew that article. Rather than hear me out, they only wanted to keep their hands clean. I was forced away and ended up trying to become a dentist instead. Shit. There was still one person I wanted to seek out. The one who wrote the article. The one who beckoned me into this nightmare in the first place. Finding you again wasn't simple. I couldn't get your address for the news agency. Still, I knew where you studied and was eventually able to track you down. You don't even remember that, do you? Who's there? We met before, right? About Van Lee. He used to send students to him. Are you one of his... Please, just open the door. I need to talk about the article you wrote. She was being paranoid. Don't know what you're talking about. What? No, I definitely got the right person. Go away. This is the only thing that can help me. At least hear me out. Leave or I'll call the police. She was just as paranoid too, then. That was him. I'd known that you... Oh, I get it. I finally understood how things worked after that. Simple truth is that nobody gives a shit about people like us. Goes for all of you here. None of you ever cared about the truth or justice. You only care for profit and ego or covering your own behind. Protest all you want. You're proving my point by trying to shut me up. There's a fine detail that hasn't escaped me. Aurelia Chase used to be a collaborator of Dr. Lee, leading countless students to their doom. That naturally didn't get addressed at all in her article. It was never about justice. Took advantage of her knowledge for money and fame. Ended up being the one to suffer for it once again. Now let me ask you, can you truly and honestly say I'm wrong for trying to take things into my own hands? Everyone else was only looking out for themselves. The police demonstrably wouldn't do it. I like to think that accountability is a good thing. Do you? Wasn't looking forward to seeing you again. I believe he had an even worse building somewhere. Whoa, hold up a sec. What's a window cleaner? What does a window cleaner need this for? I'm also a general handyman. Hard to make ends meet with just cleaning. Oh, this gig got decent pay. I feel ya. Makes sense to me. Alright, stay safe up there. Same to you. Hold it. What happened to the usual person? That disguise didn't last long. I can spot a snoop when I see one. I thought we had an agreement. Who are you working for? And why do you look familiar? She recognizes me? That might work in my favor. Greetings, Mrs. Holden. You likely recognize me from a certain newspaper article. Indeed, I am an associate of your former client. Come here on behalf of our organization. I don't appreciate visits without prior appointments. Sure, have your first complaint to an assassin who would be that he showed up unannounced. You must understand that we are forced to be discreet in the current situation. Any more contact than necessary would be too risky. Yet you still walked right past the FBI. Take it you're looking to discuss worthwhile business with me then. Here to deliver an urgent warning, as well as a proposal to take care of it. Let's hear this elsewhere. I see. However, there's nothing about this journalist to find. The only records I keep are perfectly unproblematic. Look, I wasn't implying otherwise. I'm sure your business is being conducted with the greatest care. But still, it only takes one client letting slip more than they're supposed to. I take great care that they don't. Look, you would have said the exact same thing about our organization. This clearly isn't just your average journalist. She got her hands on proof that was absolutely believed to have been destroyed. If she can get to the Reaper, she can definitely get to you. I do propose that I deal with this. Even though this is your primary line of business, not mine. And it's clear you want revenge. Why don't you just handle it? Doesn't have to be complicated. Figured she'd be the toughest customer. Maybe I'm lucky she doesn't see through me yet. It's, in fact, not that simple. This has to be an open and shut case. If there's any doubt, then our current investigational efforts will be looked into. Which would, at this moment, point straight toward you. We don't know how much she knows already. You wouldn't want that risk. We're bound to purity by our credo. If we were to personally handle this matter, it would most definitely not appear to be an accident. What an irritating rule. So there's really only one way to avoid a disturbance. Very well, let's hear your proposal. Would you look at that? You just agreed to a cold-blooded murder deal. No worry, that's about what I expected from after you enabled all those atrocities for some cash. The Reaper left a deadly poison on that knife. Even a tiny cut will quickly lead to death. I see. That'll make it an accident unless someone can show I knew about that. Keep in mind that this poison becomes harmless within minutes after being exposed to air. You have to keep it sheathed until the right moment. Oh, he knew. Very well. The study is prepared now. But what about this book you mentioned? It's as important as you say. We could simply force her to stop her investigation. Red book with a pentagram on the front. Nothing in this room fits that description. Yes. Sadly, nobody knows what happened to it. So that idea won't work. Doesn't matter, though. She'll come as long as she believes it's here. If you mention it in the list of the auctioned item, then she is bound to appear for it. A shame. Finally, about this civil trial idea. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. What's the point? Would you rather deal with the police? They might just arrest you if you give them an excuse. You know an appropriate detective and a lawyer you can call instead. Besides, think of the money her estate might have to pay. This could also take care of a certain mob problem. You're well informed. I'd prefer if you didn't worry about problems that have nothing to do with this. My daughter's situation is none of your business. Clear? Fine, but the police. This nonsense is going to be declared a mistrial the moment it's finished. Police are a non-factor. They wouldn't dare anyway. Or they realize the poison involved, they will go to with the easiest option. You gotta be kidding me. I suspected as much, but the law really can't touch her at all. Well, leaving that fever dream of a trial aside, your plan is practical. Now leave. There's nothing else to discuss. Before that, let me finish cleaning the windows, to avoid suspicion. Note yourself, but don't expect payment for that. Well, fuck you too, lady. I was able to put the final preparations in place. The only issue was that Mrs. Holden had no need to avoid the police. The outcome of a makeshift trial wasn't important to my plan, but to cover all contingencies, I had to make sure this particular detective was invited. Thankfully, I managed to sell the idea to her daughter after contacting her anonymously. With that, ladies and gentlemen, the stage was set for our final psychological experiment. Our subjects for this one are Aurelia Chase and Melanie Holden. Even though they've done many terrible things, civil retribution wouldn't have been proper. This wasn't vigilantism. They deserved their fair chance to prove themselves innocent. This Holden provided convenient buildings to criminals, but she never killed anyone directly. If she's no killer at heart, then she won't draw the knife. It's entirely up to her. Aurelia Chase led countless people to the Reaper and tried to profit from that very fact on top of it. But I might be mistaken. Perhaps she cares about the truth. Perhaps she does feel remorse. Simple fact is, if she doesn't show up, the book will be her test. All she has to do to prove herself is not show up. If she does try to obtain the proof of her crimes, then it's clear she only ever cared about herself. Fittingly, her punishment will consist of being accused of a crime she didn't commit. It's an entirely fair setup, no? Both have a chance at redemption. Of course, there are several ways things could play out in the study, if in unintended ways. Possible for nobody to die. Least desirable result. Nothing lost, nothing gained. Also possible that both would perish from the poison. If that still means both failed the test, that's not the worst outcome. Still, it would be regrettable if Aurelia suffered the wrong punishment. And there's option 3. Aurelia does actually shoot Mrs. Holden. This is acceptable. It means she is more despicable than premised. But justice will be served. Things end up going the intended way. It was fortunately still the most likely outcome. You see now, it was all justified. You can't honestly say otherwise. All I tried was to ensure that people would suffer well-deserved consequences for their actions. And look at that. Both of them spectacularly failed the test. The truth really was worth that little to you, Aurelia Chase. It's all your fault. The suffering, these horrible memories. But you decided to cover up all the parts that didn't benefit you. In the end, my plan failed. It's all for nothing. Why am I not even surprised? Evidently never been the luckiest. But I've been... never meant to. Save it. I don't want to hear your excuses. I'm fixing this mess with some hollow apology. He's right. What can I possibly say here? If Aurelia doesn't get to say anything, then I will. I've made some bad decisions, but how can you know how she felt about them? Her actions are what matters. You think it makes me feel better looking when she felt really bad? Your whole plan aimed to make her feel bad, so I'd say yeah. And if you want to talk about actions, Aurelia owned up to her lies and mistakes, didn't she? How many people here can say they've ever done that? Trust me, it's rare. Amazing. About the part where she had to be courted and left with no other choice before that happened. Am I supposed to be impressed? Too little, too late. And you're telling us all you did was totally fair? You have some nerve to say that after shooting someone completely innocent. That wasn't part of the plan. You were courted and left with no choice. Apparently, coming clean wasn't a possible choice for you then. If your plan was so justified, then why would you kill him just for uncovering it? That was different. Nobody cares about the truth. That apparently includes yourself. There wasn't anything fair about this. It was plain revenge to make yourself feel better. Oh, it absolutely would have made me feel better. But so what? Could they just have gotten away with it? The guard knew who he was working for. And we don't have to go into Mr. Cove's corruption. Oh boy. Enough is enough. Not only did you construct a devious plan to murder and frame another person, you didn't hesitate to add more victims the moment things failed to go as expected. Dr. Leeds' goal really was to turn you into a ruthless killer, and I'm afraid he succeeded. You are dismissed from the stand. Unless there are further objections, I will move to the verdict. Good, get out. It seems like Miss Preston is no longer present. For some reason, I'm not surprised. I'll be sure to send a letter recommending her disbarment. Oh yeah, based. As for Miss Chase, this matter has now been cleared up. I have no doubts this sentence will be the correct one. Are you sure, Your Honor? Am I really not guilty? If it hadn't been for me, none of this... he would never have... I'm afraid that question is outside my jurisdiction. You're not on trial for your past, Miss Chase. However, I will at least note one thing. If you are responsible, our criminal justice system has to shoulder equal blame. Mr. Drill hadn't felt like going to the police was a fruitless effort. All of this might have been avoided. Regardless, concerning the wrongful death of Mrs. Holden, the defendant is... not liable. Court is at last adjourned. Assuming the plaintiff is willing to let us leave now. How do I put this? Seeing how the true murderer has been discovered, you are still free to pursue legal action against him. In a proper court, preferably. No dice. I can tell that's a poor bet considering my mother's actions. Leave now. The elevator will work. That's frankly more reasonable than I have come to expect. And probably because I've mostly let my ex-lawyer speak for me. Hell yeah. Get fucking fired, Victoria. The loss. It's not really that surprising. Thank you. Good game. And sorry for the inconvenience. Huh. Maybe she actually got me. That's rare. You mean to tell me she didn't care about the money after all? I feel the answer might be more complicated than a yes or no. Care about the money, but the plot turned it around. I feel like it's reasonable enough to... We actually made it. Wow, it's bright. True. Yo! We did it! Too much! We showed them! I can't believe we came out of that tower alive! I mean, of course I knew you'd do it. Okay, even I can tell that's not right. I've had too many close calls. It hasn't fully sunk in that it's over. This isn't a dream. Need me to pinch it? Pass. I'm so good for the other punches. I get it. I get it, though. It was totally amazing how you made Victoria rage quit. Something tells me she'll be back. True. Can't ever shake off people like her for good. You laid out the case just like a real detective. Maybe you should try this lawyer thing more often. Still a pro at making the worst suggestions at the best moments, I see. The others so won't believe us when we tell them about this. Your question is how I'll ever be able to visit a dentist again. Oh, gotta see that one feels rough. It's time to quit the cake for good. Yeah, that's probably not happening. Speaking of, where are we going to celebrate? I can understand if you'd rather catch some sleep first. Right before that. Indeed, I need to thank you properly, Lillian. I didn't mention it. I mean, I barely helped. Felt like my hunches should be more useful, but I'd never have pieced this together. No, that's wrong. Without you, I would have been crushed. So I was convinced that anything was better than facing what I did. I'm not sure what I would have done. So, thank you for sticking it out, so I could... You know, remember what's important. I don't know how to say this. Aurelia, don't force yourself. Oh, yeah. 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 See you later. Huh. What's happening here? Ah! What are you doing? What are you doing? What in the world did I just observe? You're watching? I certainly do have some queries now. Primarily why you're acting like you're in a high school drama. You're the one who told me to touch her heart? Well, I deeply regret that. And isn't it a bit too late to go back to that? She already revealed everything during the trial. No, there are still some things she's holding to herself. I caught up the moment, even I know she didn't see me that way, I felt that maybe one chance. I don't know what to do with this. It's more dumb. I should just pretend that the cap would stop. This is objectively ridiculous. Oh, ho, ho. Good grief. Oh. Oh. She's still outside. You can still go back and clarify your feelings in whatever way you think is optimal. No, this is for the best. Are you serious? This is where you have to. Never mind. There's no reason for me to become invested in this. Glad we overcame this incident, but I feel like it's made it clear we're not good for each other. Good is subjective. Looks like you settled your disagreements. You don't get it. I'm the one who caused this whole mess in the first place. You're correct. I don't see how that follows with the facts. You figured it out earlier. I already knew something was going to happen at the auction. A few weeks ago, an unknown account messaged me out of the blue. They wrote for them. They're an old friend of hers and were looking for an old way to reconnect. It was pretty obvious they weren't legit, though. I see. That must have been a part of Mr. Drail's efforts to figure out the schedule of his target. Even though I knew it was nonsense, I told him about her plan to visit this auction. Because of me, that he knew Aurelia would even be here, that his plan would work. Oh, so someone was asking about her movements. That's the reason you knew to come here, then. What I fail to comprehend is why you didn't warn her about this at all. Positing your intention was to prevent this incident. That would have been the most productive move. Obviously, but I thought I'd managed to prevent it myself. Without knowing what they were actually planning to do. I figured I'd be there when they approached Aurelia. Then I'd be able to expose them. Using what method exactly? Let's just say I'm good at spotting people's real intentions. Even if I accepted that, I suppose the weaknesses of that approach are evident in retrospect. Yeah, Mr. Drill never intended to directly contact her here. I didn't know what Aurelia had planned, so she slipped away. I knew it wasn't the smartest approach, but it would give me a chance to impress her, okay? I'd warned her. She should have totally tried to handle it herself while keeping up her walls. It would have only grown more distant. Or so I thought, but she trusted me completely today. She admitted to pretty much everything in her past, and I couldn't even tell her this much. And why not? Surely you could at least figure that one out, Detective. Either way, I suppose your actions earned you an equal and opposite reaction. Your plan really ended up making you the one with the secrets instead. Didn't tell you so you could point out some poetic justice, jeez. Should see the point. If I really was her friend, I could have stopped all this. That's why I'm no good for her. That's one way to see it. One of many. There is no objective take here. Do you suppose she would agree with that assessment? Probably not, but that's not the only issue here. I've seen it too many times. It's better not to not even risk it. You'll say everything is fine. Then they say they forgive you. They almost never mean it. Must have been mistaken earlier. You're clearly human after all. It should have taken so long to figure. Maybe it's simply too intense for the cosmos if the queens of crime collide. Take all the space you need for now, Aurelia. Surprised Rail's hate-filled speech at the end managed to get to you. Let you heal yourself back up. That's for the best. You've definitely gotten past the worst already. So, when we're gonna meet again, I won't hold back with the plot twists. You better be ready. Yeah. Oh. We got our lovely little ending there. Really a chase. Oh, that's a lot of Aurelia going around here. I suppose we have Trial Aurelia. Melanie. Demonetized instantly. Oh, that was good. Aurelia is fantastic. I should say Victoria was fantastic, a character and a villain. And Arkova. Need to get a breakdown. A very Larry XP, but still right good. What is that? There's a lot going on there. Jones. Old man yells at Cloud. Huh. Literal child. Zanuck. Dreo. Junio. Some jerk? Oh, that guy. Hello, some jerk. That's the guy from the backstory, librarian Kelly G. I want more of her. Where was she? Where else has she appeared in? Because I remember that sprite. I loved that sprite. Love that character. Very well made CGs. Surprising and excellent still. At Tower BG. Yeah, there's a ton of assets. Ton of unique assets in this case. Really impressive shit came together here. Custom Court was just a place you have in your super evil towers. Baden's 500 anime PGs. Yep. Knew that root double was there. So much to credit. My god. Evans Icon's gun! Second gun! Cake! Demon book. See the forum that's the list. There's literally like a playlist. A YouTube playlist with it. Wow! Do we get to find out how badly Victoria's life has been ruined by this? We're gonna get a teaser for something else? No, we're just getting the end. Darn. That was ultimately a satisfying, yeah, we don't get any resolution into these. Get you. Don't ever get a full proper update, which is fine. Oh, diggity. Man, that was intense, right? Oh. And I guess I was hoping we'd get a little more Victoria slander on the way out, but she did get rid the riot act enough. She did manage to turn everyone on her, especially the judge. It's obvious that Hellinger was tolerating her for most of the time. And until the point where just Victoria just absolutely went the fuck off and just outright fucking corrupt on her. And I think that ultimately turned the judge on her too. It's goddamn. we broke her. We broke her. We absolutely fucking broke her. That was ultimately satisfying. Anyway. God, there were very much points of it where the God. I'm still of the mind that I think if you just took out the one part of the case progression where you had that last confrontation against Victoria, it would have improved things so very much, because at any of the points during the finale, during the upward swing, gradual upward swing, once we hit, could probably describe the plot of this case as just like one gradual descent, the low point of the key being discovered. Keys, anyone? And the like doomed fucking revisualization moment, which was an incredible piece of production and an incredible piece of plot there. Like, my fucking god, that was good. That one last cross-examination before then, that one last hopeless cross-examination, that literally, like, that was the point that started taking me out of the case. I was quickly brought back in, but literally, if that had gotten out of that, could just be removed. I don't know. It's obviously hard to say. I feel like I would have dealt with the rest of. I wonder if the points of the upswing to the eventual culprit discovery and conclusion, the points of that felt like, okay, we're dragging stuff out of thin air again. We're just giving Victoria more shit to object to for not having proof. Just spinning more shit again. What if those moments would not have stood out so utterly badly? But if those moments would not have stood out nearly as much as they did, with that one part that really started to take me out of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm spitting bullshit. If so, if so, feel free to disregard me. But I'm just thinking that, like, you know what I'm saying, right? The rest of it can be excused and can probably be ignored because the rest of the plot flows honestly pretty well and keeps you engaged. Just that one point that took me out of it, like, kept me right at the edge where I started to see through some of those moments there. That really, that got to me a little bit, but that if it hadn't been for that moment pulling me out, would have, wouldn't have come so close to feeling the same at other points where we just started spitballing. Like, I feel like the sandbag thing. It's a nice callback to the detail, but that's very easily be shot down by how the fuck would that have worked? How the fuck do we even know that? We can't prove any of that. Because I guess we couldn't have you argue that because we have already opened up the avenue of, they can just dispose of all the shit. If he didn't dispose of all the shit and left evidence there for us to prove it, then why didn't he dispose of all the shit? That right puts you in a difficult position to write. I get that. So I guess there's reasonability in it just working and going over and whatnot, but I don't know, just small moments like that that stood out a bit more because of that one moment that felt like absurdly too much, that went too far before advancing the plot and prompting things to move forward. But, and literally my one complaint is just that one sequence where the descent went too far. Other than that, love this case. That one, I just, that's my one complaint. I feel like that one complaint, unfortunately, like, starts to make some of the parts of what came after it fray a little bit in my mind, but it all stems from there. Love this case, though. Love Lillian, love Aurelia, love their dynamic. Hell, even if Victoria went too far, even if I got tired of Victoria, I still love their hate dynamic. The message very obviously being that Victoria is in fact awful and deserves no good things in life. And we are also still not resolving all the mysteries cleanly. Like, was that Driel who contacted Lillian? Why did Lillian? Was that Driel who contacted Lillian? Is the JP Corp actually involved? Who gave Aurelia that article to publish? Or is the good doctor actually alive? Did they just, like, shift to another world line or something? Don't know. Mysteries that could be resolved in another installment, but don't really need to be. Let's be real. I'd be perfectly happy if there was just more Queens of Crime adventures with Aurelia and Lillian. And the other rumored members could appear too. That would be interesting to see. That would be very interesting to see. Anyways, for all of you who are have been gushing about, or been going off on keeping careful track of my uploads in this case, when I'm skipping, when I'm not, and whatnot. Your bonus here is 1 hour 40-minute finale. Could probably gush for another 20 minutes breaking down everything involved here, but yeah. Hell, even shoutouts to the person in the comments like 5 videos ago for mentioning the key going through the metal detector because the gun. It came back up. It came back up. They referred to it. Shoutouts to you. Shout yourself out in the comments for saying that. That's a good call out. I didn't think of it until they brought it up here, until I read your comment, and then they brought it up here. When they brought up setting off a metal detector, that's very much, yeah, very much goes through that. Good shit. Love that. All right. Oh man, what comes next? Genuinely don't know. I could still go back to Greatest Attorney 2. Hell, we still have to start the third case. It's like the first case completely. If I remember correctly, the third case of Greatest Attorney 2 starts off like the present day plot line. Because case 1 was I suppose case 1 technically is the present day plot line. And case 2 was the reflections of the Soseki Natsume case, the follow-up case there, which was shockingly good. Now case 3 brings everything back together and moves time forward in England. So we could go back to that. Have to think about. I know there was one case in particular in the back of my mind here, which let me see if I can check out my community tab quick. Which has been brought up, which might be worth checking out. Two sides of the same turnabout. I'm pretty sure I played two sides of the same turnabout. Oh yeah, truth and consequences. Truth and consequences. We could go through like 2 cases of that. There's like it's not quite halfway done. We could go through 2 cases of that. I think those are the 2 biggest options on the table right now. We'll see what happens then. I hope you enjoyed this. Until next time. Until then.